everyone, Kayla here with Damn the Diets. So today I have a special interview that I wanted to share with you today. I had the honor to speak with Becca Bristow. So you can find her on her YouTube channel and I will link her below. She has a ton of great advice on things against diet culture, to not go to the extremes, but rather to find your balance within your diet, within your lifestyle, and within, your perception on what your body should look like. So she is a registered dietitian, and where we started out in this interview is, I asked her to share a little bit about her history and how it then led her into intuitive eating and all of the stuff that we're going to talk about. So she is a wealth of information. So get ready for a lot of nuggets of wisdom from Becca. So here we go.
You have to do a like a dietetic internship, which is like a post-grad, about a year of training in the field, and then you take an exam. So a lot of schooling. And then I also have my master's in nutrition education as well. So it's kind of interesting. So when in like undergrad and my internship and all of that, it was, and still kind of is, although the tide is shifting a little bit, definitely intuitive eating was never discussed. Health at every size certainly was not a theme ever. It was very much like BMI. We were taught how to calculate calories, calculate ideal body weight, and all of that stuff. And even like when I was first starting out, there was kind of like a BMI isn't perfect, but it's a good tool type. I don't know. Like that was kind of the teaching at the time. And I never ever used ideal body weight for any patient or client because I thought it was like, no, like there's just no way. Everyone is so different. We can't use this one calculation. And it was always so like way off. So at least from my perspective.
And didn't they have the BMI back in the day? It used to be like a healthy range was to 27, and then they changed that back to 25.
Oh, I don't know, actually.
I heard that. So it used to be like the range was up to 27. It's like, why did they change it back to 25?
That's so interesting. I've actually never heard that. As far like when I was taught, it was at 25.
Yeah.
But I would not be surprised. But yeah, so after I graduated, I worked as a clinical dietitian, and then I did a lot of like one-on-one nutrition counseling. And it was kind of during that time, and then especially when I left to do more like social media full time, which is like a whole nother story because I went like a totally opposite direction of like everyone else in my field, which I love. I'm so glad that I did. But I started to just like read more. Obviously, like everything we do is evidence-based, but just like kind of broaden my horizons a little bit and like read books that like directly went against what I was taught and was like drilled into my head for, I don't know, it's like 7 years. And it was just kind of interesting, like, okay, and everything that I was reading was evidence-based, so it was backed up by research. But, when we have these big organizations, like governing bodies over, for example, like doctors and dietitians and things like that, they're the ones that come out with these recommendations. And, I'm not saying they're corrupt by any means, like that's way too extreme. That's certainly not it. But however, they do, maybe have like some kind of agenda, or only will focus on or show certain research and maybe just kind of put some other, like not mention other research that calls into question, what that they've been teaching for all these years. So I just kind of like came to this point of like, okay, I was, I've had a great education and I was taught so much, and like I appreciate, my background and where I've come from, but I kind of want to do my own research. And I think the beauty of being a dietitian is we are so evident. We're taught like evidence-based is the way to go. So, if you're not questioning what you're taught, like, we absolutely can. We know how to do the research. We know how to dive into like databases and find these like different studies. So it's kind of like, if you just blindly follow what everyone's telling you your whole life, may not be the smartest way to go. So that's kind of how I like fell into this. And I actually found like other dietitians who are also like very pro intuitive eating and like, let's just promote health and healthy behaviors, like regardless of weight, and not even mention weight. We need to take the shift off of weight and weight management weight control, which is still a huge part of my field.
Mhm.
But, we've been ignoring all this time mental health. We never ever take that into consideration. And I think there's finally now this slow but steady movement of, we as doctors, dietitians, or whoever, healthcare professionals, we focus so much on physical parameters and meeting physical parameters. That's all we do. We run blood tests, we put people on scales. That is like how we get our data. But we never ever think to like, how is this affecting them mentally? And if you're not mentally healthy, you may have perfect cholesterol, and you may have your BMI may be within normal level or within normal range, and yada, yada, yada. But if you are, falling apart at the seams on the inside, and you have disordered eating patterns, that's the only way that you're able to achieve those, results and get within those normal levels. That's not a healthy person either. So it's kind of taking this step back, and there's been this movement towards patient-centered care for a long time, and there have been some improvements made, but there's a lot of issues with the system, and there's not enough time to spend with patients and clients and all of this stuff to really actually have patient-centered care. But that's kind of like where we're moving to, like looking at the whole person, and not just their blood work, and not just their weight, and not just their numbers, and thinking about the mental side just as much, or if not more, than the physical side, because it's been ignored for so long.
That's so true. I completely agree. A lot of people overlook the mental, and then they almost look down upon it, or they despise it. It's like your mental and your physical are connected. So if your mental is off, it could manifest as a physical problem too. And people don't.
Absolutely.
It's like people, they're okay with you being sick for a week physically with the flu or something, but if you're down for a week mentally, you know people are just like, what's wrong with you, you need to
Yeah,
go.
toughen up,
Yeah, exactly. So I completely agree. I think it's really overlooked too, but yeah, like you said, there's a movement going around where people are, accepting that more and embracing it. So
Right.
that's a huge thing that I focus on too. So what do you have to say about like how mental health does, it could be even the root to a lot of people's problems with disordered eating, or like what role does it play in like eating disorders and body dysmorphia and all of that?
Oh, it's so, I mean, that is it. Like the mental health component, that is where all of these issues stem from. And like, we're in such a diet culture and we have been for decades, where it's so normal to like just be pursuing a lower weight or a different type of body. And that's so normal that it's like weird to not care, about what your weight is. It's weird to just accept your body for what it is. And of course it's a fine line, and that's why intuitive eating, I think, it's so important to explain what it really is, because it's such a fine line between just like completely not giving any, like not caring at all, and eating fast food and never getting off the couch, and just like, I'm just gonna love my body for whatever it is and fill it up with junk. But like that's not intuitive eating. Like intuitive eating is finding that balance between actually like fueling your body, finding what works best for you, how you feel good, and what makes you healthy, but also having that balance where you're not stuck or pigeonholed into some certain diet, or some certain like way of being when it comes to like health and wellness. But anyway, so mental health, like, I mean, that it's everything. So with diet culture, like I said, it's so normal to be on diets. It's so normal to be like trying to lose weight for like a spring break, or, a vacation coming up, or after the holidays. Like, and I used to work in, when I did one-on-one counseling, I did it in like corporate settings. And a lot of times they would have like weight loss challenges. And it's like, this is so unhealthy. I'm talking to these clients, and they're like guys who are just like, yeah, I'm literally just like not going to eat for the next 3 days to get to, like for the weigh-in, because like we're so competitive. Like that's not healthy.
Yeah.
And when you engage in these behaviors, especially over and over and over, it takes such a toll on your mental health. And the problem with diets is people are eventually going to fail, because no matter what, like whether it's a diet just cutting out a certain something, or like a diet that's just restrictive overall in order to lose weight, or whether that's like, exercising a like insane amount for a short period of time, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
it's always going to come to an end, because our bodies are not built for that. They're built for balance. They're built for being fueled steadily, actually being fueled so they can, go about their day. So anything that you partake in that is like not balanced and normal for you, is eventually going to come to an end. And when it does come to an end, diet culture has like ingrained in our minds that it's our fault. It's our willpower that was not strong enough, and it's our fault that we weren't able to stay on that diet, and therefore we should try again, or we should try another one. And that's why they make so much money, and that does so much damage to like your psyche and your mental health, because it's not you that failed. It's you're set up to fail every time you start one. So when you do fail, it's like, it's diet's fault. It's not your fault. Your body isn't meant to go through that and succeed, So that is absolutely where the mental health component comes in. But then also like you were saying, mental health, some kind of issue or something's off, it can manifest as like a physical symptom. And that is like huge for gut health. Like it's so common nowadays for people's guts to be out of whack, and not, they'll try and cut out gluten and dairy and do all of these things, which sometimes that actually may help, depending on the person and the circumstance. But most times it's just stress. It's just people thinking like, oh, that's bad for me. So when they eat it, like the gut brain axis, they're literally connected. So if you're like, oh, I can't eat that pizza, it's going to make me so bloated, it's going to make me feel sick, it's going to make me fat, like whatever, that literally does manifest in you not digesting it as well as you would if you just ate it without even thinking about it.
It's so true. That's what I talk about too. You actually create a scenario in your head, and your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference of like what's reality and what's just a thought. So you literally create
Exactly.
and you're so stressed out and tightened, and so your body literally then has a physical manifestation of that and reacts to it, and you have problems. And yeah, so like that's another thing, is if people can just change their story, their inner dialogue too, that's
Right.
so powerful just right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did the same thing. I started having problems after being
Yep.
on a restrictive diet. So I was like, okay, it must be the dairy. No, it must be the gluten. No, it must be the sugar. No, it must be this and this. And I just kept cutting and cutting and cutting.
Yep.
And then the end result of that is you don't feel better. You just put yourself into a restrictive corner. And now you have even more problems and you feel deprived. And so then you start binge eating, and then you're reacting to the foods because you can't digest them anymore because you've cut them for so long. And it's just a vicious cycle. And it's really sad. I see it all the time.
Oh, it's so common. It's so common.
Yeah, but that's what we're taught. We have to blame the food. We can't look internally. It has to be the food's fault. So
exactly.
yeah. So do you think too, back to the mental health thing, where do these problems stem from? Like where does then the mental health stem from? Like where are people starting to feel the need to have to go on a diet outside of, what I'm trying to say is a lot of people, they fear weight gain, they are unhappy with their bodies. Like, so why is that an issue? Where does that stem from then?
I think it really just stems from like media in general, especially social media nowadays, that didn't even exist before. But I mean, it used to be magazines and ads on like bus stops, and you would see all these like models who were extremely thin, and not at least for women, also for men, they're not quite as affected by things like this, but they certainly are. But women take it much harder and take it much more into consideration. But just constantly being bombarded by these unrealistic, like edited images. I mean, like I said, magazines and just print ads in general is like where it's started. And even like if you go back to like in the 80s, like dieting was huge. Like losing weight was huge. Like everyone had to be thin, like thin. That was like such an ideal.
Yeah,
and now
appetite suppressants too, and drugs.
Yeah. So it's nothing new, but if anything, it's just gotten worse because of social media, and because of we're not only, it's not like you just buy a women's health magazine and you read that one magazine in that month and you see the images in that. I mean, we're literally bombarded with these images. We're like just swimming around in them like all the time because we have our phones attached to us all the time. And so it's just even worse. And younger and younger girls have access to social media. Like, 8-year-olds couldn't drive themselves to the drugstore and get a magazine. Their mom wasn't going to buy them probably a women's health magazine for an 8-year-old. but they have phones now. They can get on social media and they can see all of these, you know, girls in bikinis or, you know, on the runway or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And we're just constantly, we see all of these images of like perfect bodies, and like thinspiration is such a, I feel like that's kind of died down. Then it was like, you know, strong is the new skinny. I mean, there's always something.
Inspiration.
And it's whatever it is, it's a unrealistic expectation or an unrealistic ideal. And we think that they're totally attainable because that's the story that we're told. You know, just keep working harder, try this diet, like you'll get there, like, you know, you can do it. But all of our bodies are so different, and like we're seeing like 1% of like, you know, like the perfect body is like literally only 1% of people could actually attain that, like even through diet, you know what I mean?
It's
So
yeah, a lot of people, it's like Instagram feeds are just the iceberg. So you don't get to see behind the scenes of what actually went into that photo. That's like my big thing, is because back in the day when I would do photo shoots, you know, I wouldn't say I would have to dehydrate myself and diet down and do tons of cardio to where you can't even walk upstairs, you know, but you see the end product, and then people are posing a certain way to accentuate different parts of their bodies where it wouldn't even look like that in real life. They were standing normally, you know, so then people are,
exactly.
well, my butt needs to look like that, but it's like their butt doesn't even probably look like that when
No, no.
so
It's like all a mirage.
exactly, yeah. So that's what I love about some more people coming out with just normal photos, comparing how, you know, you would pose one way for Instagram
Yes.
and then you would stand normally, and it's
Like
like,
the 5-second transformation or whatever.
it's like, here's the reality here, because we have just been looking at the facade, like you're saying, for so long.
Yeah.
So that's great that that's going on. But what do you have to
Right.
say? Like, what's your advice to people? Because this is so hard for people. They constantly are comparing themselves, and they have this negative body image now because of it. Like, what kind of advice would you tell people?
You know, it's hard. It really is hard because just the way that we're at, like where we're at as a society. But I mean, you've gotta, especially when it comes to social media, like you have to get rid of all of those outlets, like where you're seeing those images. Anytime you see something that makes you feel inferior, or, oh, I wish I had that, or I wish, you know, my legs looked like that, or I wish I had her abs or whatever, like get rid of it, unfollow, like do not, you're never gonna be able to move on or grow as a person and like get out of that negative body image mindset if you're still constantly being bombarded with those images. So, and of course, like doing actual, like the work mentally, self-love, like, you know, one of the artists that I absolutely love, her name is Rebecca Scritchfield. Her book Body Kindness is awesome.
Yeah.
Have you heard of her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Book.
So like just seeking out people who, you know, are who promote, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word, but promote like health at every size, and who are all about like, you know, body positivity and intuitive eating. Seek out those people, because those influences are what's going to help you, you know, start to turn inward and have those same thoughts about yourself. But if you're still, like I said, kind of swimming in these unrealistic images and expectations, like you're never going to be able to get beyond that. And unfortunately, it's so easy to stay there because we are so bombarded with that kind of stuff. But another really awesome RD I would recommend is her Food Psych podcast. Is her podcast. I'm totally blanking on her name right now.
Christy Harris.
Yes, Christy Harrison. She's another one that's really, really awesome. And also Laura Thomas, her podcast, Don't Salt My Game. She's another really good one. So yeah, just surrounding, like just changing the narrative, like surrounding yourself with, instead of like things that make you feel inferior or make you feel self-conscious, instead surround yourself with things that make you feel empowered and make you like just physically change your brain and change those pathways to, instead of criticizing yourself or looking for something that you could change, to appreciating what you have and just working towards feeling like a better, healthier person overall, mentally as well as physically.
I love that. So did you personally go through this journey yourself, like with the
So
self-love?
Yeah, so I never like had like an eating disorder or anything like that. It's funny, like I feel like I'm in the minority as a dietitian. I feel like so many people like went to school for nutrition because they were pretty obsessed. And actually like so many of them come out years later and say like, "Oh, I battled with an eating disorder for so many years." And so luckily that never was my story. However, like I would say that like just being taught what I was taught in school, kind of, and I wouldn't like, fear is a strong word. I wouldn't say I ever feared foods, but I was just like extra conscious of like refined flour and saturated fat, which I have a whole different opinion on now than what I was taught in school. And things have just changed in general. But just, kind of being more strict with my diet for health reasons, but not necessarily for like body
Mhm.
reasons or like being on a diet to like change physically. Um, but I will say that like when I really started like embracing intuitive eating, like I don't know, I definitely gained weight, but like I almost didn't even notice it because it was just like I was already like mentally at a point of like this is where my body's meant to be, and like if it like this is where this is what my body's gonna look like, this is what I'm gonna be at if I, want to like have pizza every once in a while and like go out to dinner and like, get dessert or like just live my life basically.
Yeah.
So there was like a little bit of a mind shift with that. And like I did that whole like, I don't know if you saw that video, but it's like my why I don't want abs video.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
ask you about that too.
Which was like probably one of my first videos that wasn't like necessarily about intuitive eating, but like spoke to that. And like I had a realization for myself, not that I wouldn't say I was ever like obsessed or super fixated on it, but like I feel like I was always like trying to like just work out in a way that would like hopefully maybe it's hot yoga, maybe it's more running or like whatever it is that will like finally get me a more like abs basically. But like just the way that my body is, like I literally store all of my fat in my midsection. Like I have like stick arms and stick legs. Everything is around, like my butt's small. Like it's just, that's where it is. So like I finally got to a point where I was just like, oh, like that's just how my body is. Like if I'm getting rid of all that fat, like I'm going to be in trouble. Like I just have to accept that that's not ever going to be like my body and just like rock what I've got because I literally can't get rid of that and still be a healthy person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's so much body diversity. Like there's so many different kinds of body types. So we have this perception that there's a one ideal that we all have to attain. So people are literally killing themselves over trying to reach this unrealistic goal. And it's
Absolutely.
just terrible. So I think that, yeah, the first step maybe is to accept body diversity. And, this is the hardest thing for people, though, is that it's hard for them to even try to accept that, because
Right.
these beliefs are so ingrained in them. So that's awesome that you were able to do that because that's so hard, and
Yeah.
especially that's amazing that, you didn't get too into it. You didn't have like an eating disorder, but you were still able to find intuitive eating and health at every size just on your own. Because typically, how people get into that is because they're struggling and they're like, I need
Right.
answers, so that's like so cool. You went against, what you were taught without questioning. And then, so
Right.
I really admire that.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
yeah. So what is your definition of, intuitive eating and just like intuitive lifestyle too? Because I feel like it goes beyond the food too.
Hmm.
Like you said, people just overdo exercise and they overdo
Right.
criticisms on their body. Like, what is the whole intuitive approach to you?
Right. So definitely, I mean, it's learning how to like get in tune with your body. So like one example would be actually getting in touch with your like hunger and fullness cues
Mm-hmm.
and learning how to really listen to cravings. And then also when it comes to just like being active in general, we're so ingrained and we're so taught to like, running is good cardio or going or strength training is what's going to do XYZ or whatever it is. But like really at the end of the day, like it's if you once you take the whole weight loss and trying to change your body physically out of the equation, you really just have to focus on like just be active, and like that's even like from, I mean, that's for me to say that is still like pretty out there in comparison to like what I'm taught, because we're taught like 30 minutes of moderate exercise or physical activity a day is like best for heart health. But like I think we just need to throw all of that out the window, because we tell people like this is what you should be doing, but what if they don't want to do that? Or like what if they don't feel like, what if they don't enjoy that? They're not going to do it. So like instead, like let's just reel it back and stop being so prescriptive, and instead just teach people to listen to, like, tune in and listen to their body. Like for example, since being pregnant, I walk so much. I never used to go on walks, but like I love walking now. Like before I would have been like, oh, I've got to go, if I'm going out, I'm going on a run. Like I've run marathons. Like I'm like, oh, like, but that for me, just to like go out for a walk feels like nothing. But like right now in the stage I'm in, that's like perfect exercise for my body. Like I feel great during it. I get a good workout,
A
but
lot of people feel guilt around that. They feel like they can't just do like light stretching with yin yoga. They have to go to the power, and they have to go to the most, extreme. So
hot yoga. Yep.
yeah, but it's like, what if you literally just need that? Your body needs like a lighter. That's actually the most productive you can be, is to do the lighter version that day.
Exactly. We're so taught to go to the extreme. And like that goes for diet too. It's like, oh, like I should be careful. I'm taught to be careful about added sugars. Like, well, then maybe I should just cut them out because that would be better. But like, no, it's not, because that's just going to backfire and you're going to end up eating way more.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like being intuitive is just like learning literally how to tune in and like listen to your body, which can be so hard when you've gone years without doing that. And it can be really hard to learn like how to listen again, especially for someone who not even was like a chronic dieter and like physically went on like different, defined diets like Weight Watchers or Atkins or paleo, keto, whatever. And some people don't go on those for weight loss or whatever, but it's really, it can be hard to get back there, but it really is just like learning to listen to what your body is telling you, whether that's like, okay, like I'm getting full, I should slow down, or like I really would just like love some pizza right now, or like I'm just so not feeling the gym today, my body is so tired, like I'm just gonna rest instead. Or on the flip side, like I feel like antsy and full of energy, like I need to get out and go for a run, or like I need to go out and go for a walk. Like just learning how to listen, really. And it can be hard, but it's so worth the work, because once you learn to do that, you learn that one time. It might take like, it could take years, but like once you get to that point where you're pretty confident in listening to your own body, you never have to learn anything else again. Like will go through life and you can use that as your compass for whether it's healthy eating or, balancing not so healthy eating and exercise and things like that, because we go through seasons, we go through changes. We're not stagnant, and even on like a week to week basis, like our hormones are all over the place, like as women, especially.
Yeah.
So once you like put that work in and like commit to figuring that out, like you're good, like you're set for life. Like, and that's why I'm so passionate about this, because there's always going to be another diet. There's always going to be, that $1 billion industry is always going to want to keep you on the hamster wheel and, teach you or tell you the next big thing this is going to be the thing that, finally gets that 5 pounds off your waist or whatever it is. There's always, that story is just going to keep changing. It's always going to be there. So once you can learn to just like get rid of all of that and go off of your own body, which is the only thing that can actually tell you what exactly it needs, because it's your own body and everyone is so different. You can't prescribe someone something that's going to be perfect for them. You'll never be able to, because we're not as intelligent as just listening to our own body. That's needs change, second to second. So once you learn that one time, like you're set, and like you might still struggle from time to time, but that's really like all you need to like get through all of like the seasons of life and how things change. And kind of like what I said earlier, it's so important that there's like this balance of, you know like eating well and being active while also like enjoying yourself. And like, if you want to have a piece of cake, like have a piece of cake. But it's like, it's so important that there's the balance of the two. Cause I hear all the time, people are always like, well, if I intuitively ate, I would just eat, crap all day long. And it's like, well, that's not intuitive eating. Like
And forever
that's
after. It's like,
right.
because I have this craving now that's so intense, that means that I'm just going to do this forever, and I'm just going
Exactly.
to eat meat until I'm obese.
Right.
That's
But
not the case.
that's not the case. It's not how it works. And when you're not eating intuitively and you're on some kind of diet, or even like not like physically on some kind of diet, but you just have those restrictive ideals, or like, that food's good and that food's bad. Like when you live in that like morality, like you look at food and diet and exercise through like a moral lens, your cravings are going to be way stronger, those voices are going to be so much louder. But when you can let go of all of that, and it takes time, but learn to do that, it's just so much easier. And no, you're not going to eat that way forever, because your body won't allow it. You're going to feel like crap, and you're going to start craving, other things. So there's definitely like, that balance, because it's, you're still seeking health. You're still seeking feeling good, and you still want to be a healthy person. It's just doing it in a totally different way that we've been taught all along is how we get healthy, when really that doesn't get you healthy.
Exactly. And again, back to schooling and back to diet culture, it's like questioning all of this. It's like we're taught not to question. It's just like, no, just do this and that'll be the answer, to just follow the next diet trend or whatever.
Right.
So, yeah, but with intuitive eating, I think that it is really hard for people to, listen. They're like, well, okay, that's great and all, but I don't know how to do that. So it is like a process of trial and error and learning your body again, because you've been so out of touch, because you've been taught to not trust it, that it's here to hurt you and just tempt you, and you need so much willpower and you need to control it and you need to suppress it. So yeah, it's a hard process, but it is doable, like you said, and you have to put in the work. I think it scares people, because it is hard and it's uncomfortable, but that's the only way to grow and change, is to feel uncomfortable and to, mess around. It's okay to, do it. You're not doing it wrong, but it's okay to make a mistake,
Yeah, and experiment. And
yeah, exactly. So that's part of the process of learning again. So yeah, I completely agree. So you touch on so many things. I'm like, oh, I already had that question. So you've already
perfect.
Yeah. So what would you say then? You mentioned like different diets like paleo, keto, like, so have you personally tried those, or like what are your thoughts on those coming from a registered dietitian? That's awesome. Like, what's your viewpoint?
So here's the thing. Well, like something like, all right, let me gather my thoughts. So when it comes to things like that, where it has to do with like cutting certain food groups, or, maybe focusing on other food groups more than others, and like therefore it's just like not like balanced necessarily. At the end of the day, like everybody really is different, and some people may feel better when they, for example, like consume less carbohydrates, or whether they, don't consume as much dairy, or like whatever that looks like. And it is totally fine to experiment, I think, and try and figure out what makes your body feel best. If you're coming from a standpoint of like, I'm literally just trying to figure out what makes me feel good. However, I think most of the time those things are used as like a weight loss tool. Then it's just like any other diet. You know what I mean? If you're coming from a place of, oh, everyone talks about keto and says like, oh my God, you lose so much weight, like I'm going to try the keto diet because I want to lose weight. Like then you're literally just setting yourself up to, like I said, fail, when we were talking about that earlier. And it's just another diet. Like it's no different than doing like a juice cleanse, or doing like Weight Watchers, or whatever. Like Atkins is no longer around, but like it's just like any of those other ones. But that being said, when you're trying to figure out what suits you best as far as diet and food, like I always come from I come from a very liberal, I guess, standpoint of like most people are going to be able to tolerate most things.
Yeah.
But we're just kind of taught, and it comes back to that like mental component, like the gut brain axis, like that's bad. I can't digest it well. When you really like break all of that down and you get rid of all of those beliefs that you have around food, and you just eat to eat, um, you might find that you really don't have like issues with these foods. But then again, sometimes people do. So have I ever tried them personally? I don't think so. Like, I was a vegetarian for like many years back in like high school and college. And like one day I was just like, I'm not satisfied by this anymore. So I just stopped. And that, I feel like that was kind of like that was like when I was starting to teach myself how to eat intuitively. Yeah, because it was like my senior year of college when I really was like, okay, I gotta figure this out. Like, I'm not very good at stopping when I'm full. Like, I always overeat and I'm just uncomfortable. And like college doesn't help when you're like hungover and pizza and like those kinds of things. But yeah, so I don't think I've ever, I'm like trying to think, I don't think I've ever really tried any of those really, because I've always come from like a balanced perspective, but just now even more so than like years ago. But I think if you're coming from a place of I'm truly just trying to figure out what works best for me, like maybe your gut isn't super happy, and you want to experiment with that, like I don't think that's wrong. But keep in mind that there is that mental component, and if you're doing this because you're just think that grains are bad, or you think that dairy's bad for you, it could literally just be a mental block that is creating those like issues with those foods. But also I will say that it also is super important to, like, I talk about this a lot on my channel, like where the sources of those foods are coming from, like especially dairy, and like meat as well. Like if you're getting stuff that comes from like Kaffa farms where it's like they're shot full of antibiotics, and they eat like grain diets instead of grass, and like all of this stuff, like it totally messes the nutritional content, but like it also could really mess with like how well you digest it. But if it is like truly the real food, like how it was supposed to be raised, it's a different food.
Yeah.
um
Definitely to be a conscious consumer, of course, when you can, when you
right, when you can, absolutely.
and then to like if you can't and you need to eat, it's like, well, don't like freak out and have a panic attack, because some people literally create those fears and they're like, well, I just can't do anything because, and then they suffer because they can't allow themselves to be flexible sometimes.
Absolutely. Like when I go out to dinner, I don't know where any of that stuff's coming from, but like I
Yeah.
enjoy going out to dinner, so like I'm not gonna like just stop doing that. So there's definitely a balance with that. And I think just conscious is the best, like you said, is the best way to put it. Just being aware, having awareness, educating yourself on what's out there and what the differences are, and then just doing the best that you can based on what you can afford, what your access is. I'm really, really big about that, because that's such a problem with the wellness community. And like when I first started making videos, like I was really like, you just gotta like, especially when I used to make videos about like just going over different products and like here's what to look for in ingredients, like, and if you have to get something that's like store bought, like just try and find the best one that you can that fits in your budget. Because as dietitians, like we were very, very much so taught about like food deserts and food insecurity, and most people can't even afford fruits and vegetables. So like how are we teaching those people about nutrition? So, and that was like another huge reason that I started making videos, because they were free to watch and I could reach people who don't necessarily have access to that education, or someone who has that knowledge. So that's another like issue with social media and like the wellness community, because it's all these people who come from they're not in a food desert and they're not food insecure, and it's like, oh, like this is how you're healthy, you eat like all plants and like whatever it is, and that's just really unrealistic for so many people.
Yeah,
So I totally agree.
it's become like an elitist kind of thing. So then,
Exactly.
and then if people are seeing that and they can't do that, they don't have access to that, then they feel like they're a failure and they're doing something wrong and they're not good enough. But really, it's like you have to just find a route for you that's going to work for you, because
Exactly.
yeah, everyone is in a different phase. So, but that's not, they can't get healthy or be healthy with, you know, having to, you know, be exactly like everyone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. I'm glad that you touched on that. Yeah.
Yeah, most people don't even really think about that necessarily,
Yeah.
but it was like such a big part of what we were taught that like it's just always in the back of my mind, or at least I try and portray it that way, because it truly is always in the back of my mind. But
Really? Well, that's awesome that you started your channel from that.
yeah, that's like kind of why I started it. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all of that. So, is there anything else like that you want to leave with my audience? Any like, what was like the main thing that helped you, or what's like the main thing that you want to say out of all of this?
I would just say that diet culture totally sucks. And you are worth so much more than the next diet and, you know, the next cool thing when it comes to wellness and the next trendy thing that's just going to deteriorate your mental health. And doing the hard work of learning your own body, which is never going to steer you wrong, and figuring out what works best for you, not what works best for anyone else, but what works best for you, is the best thing that you can do for yourself. And just to always, you know, seek health, both physical and mental, and always look for the balance in things and try and reject the extremes.
I love that, because I always talk about that too, is just find your balance. Find your
Yep.
balance, because, you know, everyone should have their own definition of that. You know,
Sure.
and people, when they start to become intuitive eaters, then they feel like they have to do it perfectly. However, the intuitive eating way is, they think that there's another way or another label that they need to morph or conform into. And it's like, no, this process is about letting go of all of those labels and how you should be doing things, and it's just finding your own definition, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, thank you so much
You're
for
so welcome.
today, and you have so much wisdom. This was awesome talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. This was great.
Awesome.